Among other things to come out of this era was an extension basically of the Second Great Awakening, where you had various different religious revivals, especially throughout the South. But otherwise, though, the Second Great Awakening had an influence that evolved into other aspects of social reform that really impacted this era in the antebellum period. So you have various different evangelical movements that saw the need for people to improve their personal morality. Many evangels were concerned with drunkenness, acts of immorality, um, and there was a bit of a crusade, if you will, against personal immorality. So, drunkenness was seen as being perhaps the largest aspect of immorality. Drunkenness um, led to more crime, disorder, physical abuse. Um, Oftentimes, women would complain that their husbands would spend their money on alcohol as opposed to on their families, and they would become physically abusive, violent. There was a movement maybe to see immigrants, especially those who were Catholic, who didn't believe in alcoholic abstinence, if you will. Um, Maybe you can curb immigrants by restricting their alcoholic intake or anything else of the sort. Okay? The movement towards personal morality driven by a lack of alcohol is known as temperance. So it's a complete abstinence from alcohol. You see, many people to this day abstain from drinking their libations. There are no libations. Okay, do that if you must. Others of us like to have a controlled and measured, controlled consumption. And nothing unreasonable, certainly not driving or anything else of the sort, but definitely a little bit of an indulgence and very moderate take. Okay. Um, there have been others, obviously, who do not take that so seriously, and they go pretty drastically far and become alcoholic or whatnot. But you have nativists who believed in immigrant drunkenness being wrong. You have evangels who believe in alcohol leading to greater immorality. So the whole temperance movement was designed as part to restore order. And then, of course, elsewhere around the time, health and science still had not kept up with other technological advances that had come about the time. So, as you have trains and you have various different machine work, steamboats, anything else of the sort that are now coming into play, telegraphs, anything else, um, medicine still kind of lags behind. Oftentimes, it's because traditional doctors of the time rejected this whole scientific movement. They weren't necessarily bloodletting people, but there was no such thing as modern medicine. That still did not exist at this time. And as a matter of fact, you have um, a lot of diseases that are spread. So in our coronavirus era, we're trying to prevent the spread of disease by taking several different measures. One, social distancing being one of them, staying at least 6 feet apart from other people around you, wearing a mask to as a measure of protection, not gathering in groups of people, um, washing our hands very thoroughly for 20 seconds or longer with a solid lather, um, that sort of a thing. Those sorts of things we know nowadays as we're in the midst of a pandemic. In the 1840s, though, epidemics that would occur in cities, it wasn't thought, hmm, maybe it's because of our actions that we're spreading disease. That could be something to it. Um, There are bacterial infections. Doctors didn't have an answer for it. There were doctors, though, at the time who were focused on maybe other natural healing. Phrenology came out around this time. Phrenology is a study of the human skull. And phrenologists believe that a person with a larger skull would therefore have a larger brain, therefore would be smarter and a more intelligent person. The science of phrenology, I put into layman's term, but that's basically the ultimate concept to it. Uh, Nowadays, it's not thought to really have any sort of scientific value, but you might have a shape of one skull, various different bumps, and various different, almost like if you feel your head, you can kind of feel maybe um, potholes, if you will. Of course, I don't have as much hair nowadays, so I used to feel a lot more hair back there, but that's a whole different story. Um, Otherwise, it was thought that maybe people who had a larger skull, or maybe if it were shaped a certain way, it represented somewhat of, more of a roundedness, and the person would be more intelligent, capable of better character. Okay, that's kind of where we were at the time. Um, Medicine, as I had mentioned, still hadn't quite taken off. There were doctors who believed in old traditional healing type aspects that really didn't add any sort of true medical value. There wasn't any sort of science that was allowed around this time. Although you did have various scientists who experimented with sulfuric ether. We know that today as an anesthetic. So, if a surgery could potentially be performed, maybe you can use your anesthesia to put the person to sleep while surgery is being performed on them. That maybe was used as a way to sedate these patients that had never been previously done before. Now you've kind of revolutionized some things. Anesthesia at the time was still deemed as being highly non-traditional and questioned and mistrusted by those medical experts of the time. Mm. Okay. Um, Nowadays, a big concern of ours is the spread of coronavirus, so as to prevent COVID-19. It had never really been thought before that, maybe some bacterial or viral diseases could be spread from person to person. Maybe if you have medical students who are touching various different cadavers or other things without washing their hands or without taking protective precaution, that they might actually spread the disease to other medical students or to their families or otherwise. If you spread disease, it's probably because you're not taking precautions to not just social distance or quarantine or anything else like that. You might not be washing your hands. Think about how many diseases can be spread by just not washing your hands. And I'm not just talking about coronavirus. I'm talking about all kinds of different bacterial diseases and viral diseases. Um, you have various different folks who bring this to light. One of which was Oliver Wendell Holmes, who's actually a poet who talked about how maybe we're spreading diseases. The idea of washing your hands is really important and emphasized in this era because it was soon to be discovered as a great measure to prevent the spread of disease. Yeah, think about how many times you touch your face. Think about how many times you touch door handles. Think about how many times you touch various different things that other people have touched. Maybe you touch your face. Maybe you touch other people's faces. You can pick your friends. You know, you can pick your friends. You can pick your nose, but don't pick your friend's nose. That sort of a thing. Okay. Once medical students were required to wash their hands, it was amazing, along with disinfecting their surgical instruments or anything else they used, it was amazing how diseases stopped spreading. Also, around this time, public education came to the forefront. Previously, education had been limited to white males and their privileged white sons, especially in the South. But around this era, in the antebellum period, all throughout the country, the idea of universal public education would come to the forefront. States would soon adopt that. As a matter of fact, in the state of Texas, it is mandated in the Texas Constitution that we have a public school system to where all citizens of Texas shall have access. Okay? And it's funded through taxpayers. So the Texas State Constitution guarantees public education and the right to. So you have a number of states before Texas existed that started building public schoolhouses, creating various different colleges that would train teachers. For example, modern day Texas State University used to be Southwest Texas State University, which used to be Texas Teachers College. Texas State University was founded as a school to train teachers. You have the advent of many of those different schools all across the United States that would train teachers as a result of public education now coming into the forefront. So when you have educational reformers like um, Horace Mann, who was the Secretary of Education in Massachusetts, now you have public school, the right to public school, and public school funding coming to the forefront. And it would contribute to a civilized society. The more people you have educated in a society, the better off your society is going to do. So to extend education publicly now serves the greater good of your overall society.